Welcome back to another episode of the Emotional Mastery Podcast. Happy Thursday. Today, I'm talking to Madalina Petrescu, who is a leading cardiologist in the US, co creator of HeartQ and the Heart Intelligence Lifestyle, Heart Intelligence Coach, and best selling author. Madalina's life as a busy cardiologist shifted 10 years ago when she hit bottom from severe back pain and burnout. Despite her incessant efforts to find the cause and cure with traditional Western medicine, her pain persisted. This led her to stop seeking outside and start journeying within to find her answers. Her back pain became her portal to the deeper healing her heart was inviting her into. Along her spiritual journey, she became present to the deeper truths about the nature of unconscious programming, limiting patterns, and scarcity beliefs based scarcity-based beliefs that had been driving her into her stress, pain, and fulfillment. She immersed in a plethora of transformational and healing practices in the realms of consciousness, spirituality, energy healing, psychology, and science. In her journey, she discovered how intrinsically heart disconnection is linked to physical pain and disease. Her higher purpose in life is to support people to take the journey from the head to the heart. And Madalina emphasizes your heart is the key, the path, and the guide to truly connecting with your authentic self and create the aliveness, harmony, alignment, and freedom you are seeking. Madalina feels she is able to truly help one heart at a time to unveil the truth from the inside out. And today she feels her higher calling in life is to support others to reconnect with their heart and activate their heart intelligence as the source of inner guidance to heal, unveil their most authentic true self, create alignment, and experience vitality, inner peace, and deep fulfillment. And honestly, like so much of this podcast, it always is so divinely timed, synchronistic. We recorded this back in February, and the conversation was so beautiful. I mean, we talk about, what heart Q is, what heart intelligence is, what heart coherence is. She shares her story about how this injury completely transformed her life, how she went from having this seemingly happy, perfect life to realizing how actually unhappy she was, like deep inside. And, we talk about coming into the heart. And this has really been a practice. I've had so many lessons lately, so many. And so this was so beautiful to edit and re-listen to this conversation from this perspective that I am in now, because we're always changing, always, right? If you listen to the episode with Ken Close, every second we're creating 800,000 new cells, right? So it's like, what are you creating? And all, 97% of them are adaptable. And so that just always blows my mind when I think about that. I'm like, I'm literally choosing my reality. And it's interesting today, actually, this past week, I've been feeling pretty, I don't want to say low vibe. I've been feeling very frustrated. I've been feeling very um resistant. I've been feeling, yeah, just, I guess, just frustrated is really the word. Frustrated for a number of reasons. And rather than, I think every time I feel that way, I'm always pushing against it and trying to fix it and trying to be high vibe or be all the things like right now. And and it's been a lesson. And of course, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I believe that can relate to certain individuals, that can relate to books, that can relate to podcast episodes. And so a lot of what has been coming to me over the past week has been perfect for what I'm experiencing. And this is why I feel that it's so important to always be infusing your day with inspirational podcasts, books, Instagram. I really, if something makes me feel any sort of constriction on my Instagram, I tend to unfollow people just because I want everything that I see to feel good when I am on there. But a big lesson this past week has just been this reminder of patience, this reminder that everything is as it's meant to be. Everything is on a divine timeline. And although that might not always feel like the timeline I want, everything truly does happen for a reason. And really sort of like reframing things and viewing things from this perspective. And when I'm feeling those things in those moments, to allow myself to feel it, because so often, again, like I said, when I feel frustrated, I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel this anymore. I just want to be like all high vibe, and I want to be just coming from that heart space all the time. And it's just not possible because we're human and we are living in this 3D physical plane. Another massive lesson that I got this week, I took Lauren Aletta's 3-month intensive psychic development intensive program, and she talks a lot about colors and reading the frequency of color and reading color when it comes to things. And I had this, and I know she explained it. There's sometimes that you just hear things in like certain ways and it clicks, but she would always talk about perceiving colors and asking us, challenging us to try and tap into the color and the frequency and all these things. And I feel like in my 3D lens, I was like, okay, I need to see the color. I need to see the aura around somebody. Like I need to see those things. And I'm reading this book called How to Know the Higher Worlds. I believe it's what it's called. I'll link it. It's by Rudolf Steiner. I'm fucking blown by this book because it's everything I've been needing this week. And there's so much that's clicking into place. But he talks about color and frequency, and we're not seeing the color, right? It's not this 3D lens perspective. Like I believe that some people can see that. Some people can view somebody and see their blue aura, their yellow aura, whatever it is. But it's so much more nuanced than that because we are not seeing it with our actual physical eyes, right? This is a feeling, and everything comes back to feeling. That is why I'm always focused on feeling and emotional regulation and being able to discern what we're actually feeling and why. Like, I, in my journey, have noticed that frustration feeling when my heart feels restricted, when my heart feels closed off. And it's so easy for the mind to come in there and be like, this means this and this means that, and make it mean this whole big thing that it didn't. But if I can just come back to that feeling of like, ugh, this doesn't feel good, right? And that's another thing he talks about in the book. It's like there's literally like two feelings, aliveness and deadness. And it can be literal, but it can also be like when you see something that is alive, you feel light, you feel excited, you feel expanded, you feel open, you feel in love, you feel all these things on varying degrees. And when you see something, you sense something that is air quoting dead, right? You feel closed off, restricted, all these other things that come to it. Like a plant. A plant is either coming blooming or it's dying. And so he was talking about when it comes to colors, when you see the color blue, can you like pause and like what does that color actually feel, right? And so I was like, whoa, I had this just moment where it's like, that is everything that Lauren was teaching us. And for some reason, my 3D mind just would not process it, would not get it. And so I was reading this section of the book. I was at the pool with my son and I was just like looking around and I was like, the green of the trees. And then I could hear the trees, the wind was blowing and I was like, whoa, they're talking, right? Can like we tap into that? And then I was like watching people in the water and just sensing like, what was I feeling from each individual? And sometimes for me, it's literally an expansion in my heart or a restriction in my heart. Those are my two indicators of the way that I'm feeling. And it's the process. And I believe my journey, my process needs to be discerning the levels and layers and frequencies within that, but it's a start and we all have to start somewhere. And it was just this huge like aha moment where I was like, whoa, that's exactly what she was teaching. And I finally get it. It's not that we're seeing the color, but what is the feeling that we get from the colors? And then once we become familiar with those feelings, then when I sense somebody and I'm like, oh, that's the feeling that I get with the color blue. And then I can attach that color blue to that individual. Or when I'm like, I literally wanted to just go out and like sit with all the plants and like find like a garden and just sit with all the different colors of the plants and just feel what they have to say and all of that. But yeah, it was really beautiful. And also within the same book, it was just talking about patience. It was talking about patience and trust and gratitude and remembering that we're all one. And it helps you shift your perspective a lot, especially to people that you may feel anger with. Of course, it's all a reflection, but also what is it showing you? And we are all connected. You know, I was on Instagram and somebody's story was posting, um, they had just had a baby and they were saying that, every single human being begins that way, right? In this pure innocence. And somewhere along the way, things shift or trauma happens or, just, I mean, we all have our own karmic ties and a past in life and things like that. But we all start as this baby that doesn't know that it's any different than its mother or the things around it, right? I think I talked last week when I was reading about Mars and Pluto, and the difference is like Pluto is just this like deep energy of being deeply connected with everything. And so when it gets angry and when it feels aggression, it's to everything. It's not just like targeted at somebody. It's this deep like that baby when it's not fed. It feels angry, but it's not sitting there being angry at the mom. It's angry at itself, and it's angry at the mom, and it's angry at the dog, like anything that's around it, because it doesn't understand that it's different than anything else. And so that patience has always been a lesson since the day one of my spiritual journey. I remember the very first time that I ever meditated on it. That was the first lesson I got. And that was around the same time that I was learning human design. And I was like, well, of course that would be my lesson. I'm an MG. Like, I don't want patience. I just want to go. But it's like coming full circle. And yeah, it's all about when we're in those moments of frustration, when we're in those moments of feeling these ways, can we take a pause and find that heart centered space? And this episode is just so beautiful in accessing the heart and understanding what the heart is telling us, and really coming into that space and leaning into it and trusting your intuition and connecting with the heart, because it is such a powerful organ. Obviously it keeps us alive, but beyond that, it's spirit. It is emotions, right? Like we feel. The entrance to the heart is feeling. That's what Madalina said in this episode. The entrance into the heart is feeling. And so that's where emotions are so important, right? This emotional mastery that this podcast is, right? It's not about mastering, it's not about like being the master of your emotions and nothing can get to you. It's about having these tools to master that, emotional regulation so that you can tap into that space, so that you can be heart led. And I don't know that I think there are certain people that are enlightened beings that can come from that space all the time. But just as your everyday individual that is on this journey, like we're going to get mad. We're going to feel sad. We're going to feel, all these blocks and shadows and, whatever. And I think coming back to that space will allow you to tap into yourself throughout that journey and to raise your self-worth. Because once you form a relationship with that space in your heart, then you know that that's who you are. That is your true self, right? We had a beautiful guided meditation within the Holistic Human Design Academy this past weekend. And one of the women in there shared that the meditation was like one of the first things that really allowed her to hold herself in that way. And it was so moving and so beautiful, because we're just that's what it's about, right? And we get so lost and so confused sometimes by things in life that have happened to us. Um, and we get disconnected from our heart. And coming back to that space and knowing that that's what it's all about, and that's the space that you can trust and feel safe in and come back to. And so again, yeah, this conversation was so beautiful. And I'm really excited for you to listen to it. And all the ways that you can contact and follow and work with Madalina are down in the show notes. And again, Holistic Human Design Academy will start its second round in August, the end of August. So if you're interested in that program, like I've been saying since it started, this program is just everything that I've poured my soul into. And I know that it's felt. The feedback that I've gotten is that it is felt, and it is learning these modalities like human design and astrology, but I'm teaching it in a way that I feel like is really peeling back the layers piece by piece to really understand your subconscious, your mind, the way you operate in just coming to yourself and coming to that to trusting yourself, because human design can be very mental. It can be very mental of like sometimes we need things to like label us and define us. And I want to teach it in a way that empowers you to come into yourself and know where you are and have these as tools to support you in your journey. So whether you want to become a human design reader, or whether you're looking to add human design to your coaching business, or even if you're just curious to learn your own human design and your own astrology and understand yourself on a deeper level, whatever spectrum that you're coming in on, you're going to receive it on all levels. And yeah, I'm just so lit up by this program in so many ways. So again, that link is in the show notes. You can get on the wait list. Again, it starts at the end of August for the second round. It has been absolutely phenomenal. And you can follow me on Instagram at rochelle.christian. It's ROCHELLE.CHRISTIANE. TikTok is the same. YouTube is at Emotional Mastery Podcast, and website rochellechristian.com. You can also book a one-on-one human design / astrology session. It is infused with both because I can't speak to one without the other, and the 12-week coaching container as well, which is similar to the Holistic Human Design Academy, except for it's one-on-one. So it's all about you and your chart, and going through all these layers and all the things. So any of those, all the information is down in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next week. Welcome to the Emotional Mastery Podcast. Today I have Madalina Petrescu, and she is a leading cardiologist, co-creator of the Heart Intelligence Lifestyle and HeartQ, best-selling author and heart intelligence coach. So I obviously would love to learn more about all of this, and I will hand you the floor to just kind of introduce yourself, your story, anything, as much or as little as you'd like to share, any pivotal moments along the way that kind of got you here, and then we'll take it from there.
Wonderful. Well, it's so great to be here. I'm really excited to be here on this platform and to share my story. And there's always so much that we can learn. And what I'll share is that my journey is that I'll share my journey because I think it's really, fascinating, and it brought me to my deeper purpose, So my journey is that, let's say 10 years ago, if anybody would have, like, on the outside, it looked like I probably had the perfect life. Like, here I am, a very successful, busy cardiologist, mother of 2 beautiful girls, a loving husband, and here I am doing all this international talks, part of faculty, a teacher, and multiple directorships. And then the outside, it seems like it's all going perfect. But on the inside, the feeling for me is that I was constantly trying to pressure myself to fit into the image that I thought was right. So I was just like living life actually in a survival. I was struggling, First of all, the life of a cardiologist is like so tough and so much. It's like emergencies, and there's like things that are happening all the time. You're not sleep deprived, lots of burden, you're barely getting sleep, and then you're trying to get home to the kids and like be a mother and have time for yourself. And I didn't realize it, that I was just living from all kinds of patterns that I didn't even know that I was operating from unconsciously. Perfectionism, workaholism, overachiever, people pleaser, yes sayer, self-denial, just pressuring me. And my life just internally was a whole bunch of stress. I was just like so unhappy. I was just so stressed. I was running all the time. I feel like I was running on this treadmill all the time. And I was just thinking, well, this is, I guess, what life is about. And I just thought that was normal. I literally, and it's really incredible because I thought that was normal. And I did the best with what I knew in my conscious awareness. So that's what I knew. And I did the best with what I knew. And that was my best, which sucked, and then I thought at one point, I'm like, this is what life is about. Where's the joy? Where's the juice? Where's all of that? It's like, maybe I just have to keep working harder and go faster. Maybe then I'll get it. That's the mindset. And so all of that was going on. And then basically 10 years ago, and by the way, I used to run, and running was my way of staying alive in this matrix. So like my running is like, if I ever felt any negative emotion, I would just run and feel positive and keep fitting in this matrix that I thought was normal, that I had to fit into. So running was my mechanism. And it kept me going until it didn't. And then basically, long story short, is 10 years ago, I ended up going for a run. I ended up having an injury and severe back pain. I literally ended up like not being able to walk. I literally had to walk, like limp home, and that pain wouldn't go away, no matter anything that I did. And here I was, a doctor, very ambitious, very controlling, very determined to like use any methodology, and I couldn't get it fixed. No matter the doctors, no matter the studies, like nothing could be figured out, and it drove me crazy. And then what ended up happening is all of those feelings that I hadn't been feeling, that were trying to get to me, now came like a volcano. And of course, I wasn't equipped, because you don't learn that in medical school. And I suppressed everything. So then I didn't have like the capacity to hold space for anything. So I just broke down. And what started out as, 1 year of not being able to run and just actually getting worse, like I couldn't sleep at night, and it just evolved into a deeper thing, like a depression and anxiety and existential crisis. Like, what is my life all about? It just like evolved into some huge crisis in my life. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? Like, why am I so unhappy? And like, why did my whole life turn upside down from not being able to run? And that's when basically it happened, where after 1 year, of trying and nothing was working, it happened where I kind of like entered, I realized that this needed to happen. And I saw that this crisis was actually a portal for me to actually come back to myself, because I was so off path. I was so misaligned with my true self, with my true path. I was living so unconsciously and out of alignment. And so then it was, I mean, here I am like a cardiologist healing other people's heart, and I hadn't connected and healed my own. And what was the worst thing that could happen to me became the best thing that could happen to me. It actually became the portal. And then I started, basically, because I wasn't doing it for me, life did it for me. Like all the running that I was doing in my life, I couldn't run anymore. So life brought me to a stop, and I started being present. I started feeling. I started opening and turning my energy inward and like looking and asking what's going on. And so turning the lights on, started a journey into my heart. And that's where this all came from. I started realizing, wow, I've been living my life from this unconscious patterns, from lack, completely disconnected from my heart, living inauthentically, and unhealed wounds that I hadn't even know existed, and fitting into these patterns, as a way to like not really deal with myself. And then I started asking, then who am I, and what is my truth all about? What does that even mean? And I brought all my passion and focus that I had directed outward. I brought it inward to myself, and I started going to all these workshops and books and healing and transformations, and years and years of that, where I then realized that, where I am now, that my deeper purpose in life is to help other people also awaken to their true authentic path and come back to their own hearts, so they can be in the driver's seat of their own lives and live an authentic and fulfilling life. And that's what I think, I feel true healing is coming back to that wholeness, that love, that truth, and what that journey entails. So I'll stop there, but this is really what I'm all about.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I think so many of us like can relate to that part of the story where it's like you on the outside, it's like you have everything, right? Like the job, the family, all of these things. And that yet we're still trying to like climb our way to this like societal standards, right? And just kind of like still feel the way we want others to perceive us to look, you know? And my question too is like for you turning inwards, right? From having that like busy career, the family life, and always being on the go and being a cardiologist, in the medical field, was there any sort of resistance turning inward into like a more spiritual path?
Oh my gosh, there was so much resistance. I mean, it was crazy, of course. And I'm like, I was the only woman in all of these men field, and everything there was based on the standards were workaholism. Time for self is selfish and lazy and non-productive. I mean, so I had all these things to work. So it took me a long time. That's why I was having a lot of inertia and resistance. I felt guilty. I felt like ashamed. I was like, and so I started my spiritual path because it was something I could no longer not do. Once I started like reading some of the books like Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, some of these other things, a whole bunch of stuff, it's like you can feel the truth when it's happening. We can all feel it. When you're getting closer to that truth, you feel it as a vibration in yourself, like some stuff is opening. And I felt that. And so I started being a closet spiritual path person. Like I wouldn't tell anyone, but I did it like in hiding, almost like ashamed of it. So I lived like a kind of a dual life, where show up to life and whatever medicine, and then at home, like coming home, reading, healing, and the weekends going to like events. And my husband then started joining me, and the kids were part of it as well. And so it was like a duality life. And then I realized, oh wait, what am I doing? Like at one point I said, this is not authentic. Like, why the heck am I hiding that? Like, that means that I'm ashamed of my who I am, my truth. And yes, because I know how those guys think. I know how some of the scientists, think.
Mhm.
But then what happened is I said, I'm not going to do that anymore because I'm not being true to myself. I'm not walking the talk. So then I started creating that alignment and showing up from a place of power, like saying, this is what I am. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm teaching. I brought it to my patients. I brought it to, and then and then through that path is when my husband and I started co-creating HeartQ, which is heart intelligence. And what does it mean to live life with heart intelligence? And then, yeah, I just started coming out and just being myself. And there was a freedom. And it's interesting that the more I did that, and I came from a place of power and excitement, people were like, oh, what is she doing? Oh, what are you doing? What are you reading? Like patients and doctors, even now they're like, tell me more. I want to understand. Because when you're showing up in your vitality without trying to like convince anyone, I'm just being me, it can rub off on people, and others can get triggered. And that's their path. That's not my business. That just makes it even more clear. Oh, okay, that's not an alignment. So like, why should I try to get myself to fit in instead of me shining all of the fullness of what I'm all about?
Yeah. And I think when you're operating from a very like masculine space in that sense, right? Like then incorporating the spirituality and all these other pieces do have some sort of shame. Like I know that was part of my journey too, where it's like I didn't want to talk to people at my job about what I did, right? But now everybody's like, oh, you want to talk astrology? You want to like heal yourself? Like go talk to Rochelle, and it feels so freeing to be able to have that. As a cardiologist, was there like a line between, your medical practice and then incorporating like if like were you able to bring these modalities of healing to your clients, or was that something separate that you had to do on your own?
What a great question. And it's interesting is I evolved, the saying that you can only serve others at the level of consciousness that you are at, right? So then
Mhm.
as I'm evolving, it's interesting. People wanted me, even like other doctors, they wanted me to be the leader. They invited me into these leadership roles. They wanted my opinion because I was evolving. And so I even got trapped in some of those things that were not aligned with me because they wanted my passion and excitement and wisdom, right? And then with patients, I started feeling into patients. I started realizing that there is something deeper here when it comes to the heart. And what I believe is that, there's a lot of things that are happening, and especially with the heart, when stuff is happening, there is an out of alignment. And so I can now what I do, and I've kind of like evolved into this. I can feel people where they're at. Are they ready to hear? Some people, patients, like they don't want to hear it. They just want the pill. They give me the medication, give me the procedure. I don't want anything else because they're not ready. And I might just throw a little seed, I'll feel kind of what they're ready for. And I'll throw a little seed about something, usually just even like honoring your body. What are we eating? Food is medicine. I could start there. And then other people that I can feel are more ready, I get them to feel something, because usually the entrance into the heart is feeling. So then I kind of listen to their story and I feel into them. And then after taking care of their physical part of the heart, then I hold space for them and I just bring some, I shine the light on some of the things that they may not be seeing that serves as a portal back into their own path. So yeah, I definitely do that for patients. It's for patients. It's like whether it's patients or clients, this is kind of what I do.
Mhm. That's beautiful. I like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with PBC, and I knew there was something going on for years and years. And it's funny because it actually started during an abusive relationship. And so I've noticed it when I'm in high stress. I've noticed it when I have a ton of sugar, but I didn't want to get like the actual diagnosis because I didn't want that to define it for me. And I didn't want to be like, oh, well, this is it. I have this issue. I'm going to end up on medication. This is like the end of my life. And like it did. If you have like any irregularities in your heart, like it is scary, right? To like have it beat in a weird way and just kind of or stop sometimes. And so it was just like really bad. So I finally went to the doctor and they told me that. And I just believe so much in like the healing power. And I know in myself, part of it is suppressed anger. I just think there's stuff in there that has to be, and I'm not saying like I'm not taking the medical diagnosis seriously or anything like that. But I knew there was so much more to it than just being like, okay, here's a pill, you have this thing, be careful. But yeah, so I think that's really beautiful to be able to lead clients into trusting their own body. And when you were talking about running and how you had to stop running, you were kind of forced into it. Were you missing signs from your body previous to that were like, slow down, this is not right for today?
Oh my gosh, absolutely yes.
Mm,
Because I was following the agenda of the mind. I was following the agenda of the expectations and the pressures of the patterns of the beliefs that I had, right? That I wasn't even conscious of, because that's how it works. It's all unconscious. But there was this unconscious agenda that it was a energy of pressure. So yeah, of course, anything that would get in the way of what I believed to be productive was going to hold me back. Like that was my mindset because that's what I knew. So
mhm,
yeah, I missed all the signs. There are so many signs, and I really feel that we're always given signs and doorways, and then when we miss them, that's when we end up in these crises. You know, the crisis, like, okay, you've messed up all the signs. The universe is like, okay, I'm gonna have to intervene here because you're not getting the message and you're going so far away from you that you're going to destroy yourself. And so
mhm,
there's, that's how I feel things happen in life. And I see that, even with the PVC, like we were talking, I mean, I think that is so powerful because yes, of course, we want to make sure that we're dealing with what is a medical condition. Wouldn't be like, just forget about it, go meditate. Like I I think yes, you got to look at it, you got to understand, okay, what is it? And for sure, like I always ask people, so when you're getting these, what's happening? A lot of times there's trauma, like a lot of people, there's stuff that has happened, like that hasn't been processed, hasn't been felt. And that trauma, when it's not, healed and loved, it shows up in the body, and everybody has different ways. But a lot of times, with the rhythm, a lot of times just out of alignment, like something, what's happening that's creating that stress. And of course, when the body's in stress, you're in the cortisol and adrenaline, the body, like that's how what happens, things like that happen. It's known, it's physiology, the chemistry of stress creates such things. And so what a smart question. I mean, it's so intuitive of you that you said to yourself, I'm going to listen to myself, I'm going to see what are the patterns. And then yeah, of course the body can heal. We can, of course, our body is so intelligent, we can heal ourselves. I think most people in the mainstream society, they don't take that space. They're living constantly in the pressure energy of stress. And when you're in that energy, it's like you're constantly running from the bear. And so when do you get to relax? You can't relax in that sympathetic nervous system. You got to be in you. That's just impossible. Your body doesn't let you heal. It actually inhibits the healing. So you can't heal. So you got
mhm.
to go into the relaxed state, parasympathetic, heart coherence. And that's what actually promotes, healing. But this is not something that I feel is known or open. And this is why I'm here to, speak about this.
Yeah. And like it's for me sometimes when I feel it, like it almost gives me gratitude because it pulls me into the moment. Like I can't be thinking of anything else when it's literally like, hey, come back here. But it started in fear. I avoided the doctor for years because I was afraid. And then as I became like on my spiritual journey and like kind of, you get that point, like you said, where it's like you can't not avoid what's happening or the things that and some people do, right? Some people can go their entire lives in avoiding it. But for others, I mean, there is that point, that rock bottom where you're just like, okay, something has to change. And so that's kind of when I started that journey of like, there's more to this. Let me get curious. Let me ask questions. Let me figure out what's going on here because, you know, yeah,
I
it's
love it.
fascinating.
I call it when people, like, if you would have come to me, I would have been like, it's kind of like the knocking.
Mm,
Hello, pay attention. Like, it's exactly
yeah.
what I tell people. So you're like intuitively doing what most people don't do, because most people are not like you. Most patients, when they're unfortunately they're in a different kind of plane. So that's what I would tell people. When you're getting these arrhythmias, a lot of times it's like there's a knocking that's happening and your heart is saying, will you answer?
Hmm.
Will you pay attention? Will you come to me? Will you be present? These are the signs. And so
Hmm.
you naturally intuitively felt that for yourself, and that's how the auto healing happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you go into a little bit more detail about what the heart Q and heart intelligence is and how you work with people with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we all know about IQ, cognitive intelligence, EQ, emotional intelligence, so HeartQ is heart intelligence. And so basically what happens is that when you're in the space of the heart, so the space of the mind is that you're living on the default of the mind, and the mind is getting its consult or its information predominantly from we call it the unconscious matrix, all kinds of like programmings, conditionings, like life experiences that has happened. And it's all of them rooted on some lack, all of them, if you trace it back, it's some level of lack, not enoughness. So it's constantly telling you, you got to do this, you got to be like this, so that you can feel enough, so that you can feel worthy, so that you can feel happy. So then that's the pressure when you're living up here in the mind. And the energy that that's running on is the energy of stress. It's a survival. You're trying to survive. It's coming from fear and threat, separation. And anyway, that's kind of like what's happening there. And so you can't, like, the mind is not going to, that stress is not going to be like, oh, let's pause and be in the present moment. Why would you do that? There's like, that's a threat, so there's no time for that. And that's why that feeling. So with the heart, the idea is that when you're living a life like that, you're coming from that energy of, I need to fill my inner void from outside in. And so you're coming from that, your motivation becomes, how can I feel safe? How can I do all these things to fit in and belong so then I can be enough? And that's why when you do that, you're not engaging the heart, because the heart is not operating like that. So you're moving in all these directions that is not who you are. And that's why you end up in these situations where, like, the relationship, health, self, depression, and that's kind of the stuff that happens. So with the heart, the idea of HeartQ and heart intelligence is that you put the heart in the driver's seat. Like Einstein, says, the intuitive heart is a gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. But we have created a society where we have forgotten the gift and we honor the servant. And so now here we are having the mind and the unconscious and the limitations in the driver's seat. And then we're wondering why things are falling apart.
Mhm.
So the idea is you put the heart in the driver's seat. And when you put the heart in the driver's seat, you come from a place of coherence. Now you're centering yourself in the energy of being and the energy of feeling and the energy of tuning into from a place of truth and wisdom and love. Now that heart is leading the way, what's happening is you actually create a state of coherence. So there's, even science is now showing that there's these patterns called heart rate variability. And through that pattern is basically how there's a process that happens in the body. So when the heart is guiding the way and leading the way, there's a powerful electromagnetic field. You can feel it because you have that vitality energy. When we're in that state of flow or vitality or in love or like seeing a sunset or meditating, that fullness, that's the heart. That's when you're in a state of coherence and you're creating this electromagnetic field. You're in that passion, that vitality, you're in that flow state. When that happens, the heart rate variability patterns actually send signals to the brain saying, it's all good, relax. So now the mind is just like, awesome. So relaxing, and MRI studies have shown that the conscious brain, the frontal brain, is actually activated when you're in coherent state. And the amygdala, which is a reactive brain, the one that makes you react, that one is deactivated. So now you're able to have clear mind, open mind, and strategize and harmonize with the heart. The heart is guiding, and the mind is following the heart and strategizing based on what the heart wants. And now your amygdala, which is the one that you react from, is downregulated, so you're not as prone to be reactive. And then you're sending these signals to the body well-being hormones and all these biomarkers that are pro-health, pro-well-being, pro-expansion. And now you're feeling that because your body, you're having the heart chemistry. And the heart chemistry is a chemistry of aliveness, vitality, health, openness, harmony. And that's where health is happening. And that's where you're able to think most clearly. And you're able to meet the stuff that's coming up in your life from a place of centeredness, not reacting. The mind is kind of pressure, thoughts, reaction, pressure, thought, reaction. The heart is more like being, feeling, listening, and acting. So I'm being present. Okay, what is true for me? What am I going to do right now? Is it coming from pattern or is it coming from truth? And then so I'm being present, I'm listening, and then I'm acting from that space rather than reacting, which is just automatic, coming from the reactive brain and having all these triggers and emotional reactivity and blame and judgment. The heart is completely, so there's a process, it's a new muscle that you develop. You develop this muscle of, okay, what does it mean to slow down, breathe, tuning into yourself, feeling, and then in the moment to moment and in the big decisions. So that's kind of the way of the heart. And from that space, you open up to awareness. So, without awareness, without shining the light to like what's actually driving us, Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule you and you'll call it fate. You'll say, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Like all of that. And you realize, hold on a second, it's not happening to me. I'm actually operating from all of these beliefs and unhealed wounds and patterns. And it's all coming from here. And I need to heal that. I need to see that. I need to be present to that without judgment, and then see where that's coming from, heal that. So then it's no longer, ruling me. And then, so there's the awareness, there's a feeling that the heart is inviting you to feel your way rather than react your way or think your way. There's a feeling. And then there's a connecting to, okay, because we are whole. Like when we realize that the authentic us is fully whole and enough as we are, that's not something we think about. That's something we feel and experience. So what are those experiences? What is it that we love? What is it that expands us? So there's a process of the awareness, the feeling, reconnecting and re-experiencing, and then taking that heart-aligned action. Because a lot of times we feel, even patients, oh, I knew that I should have done that, but we don't do it. And that takes courage, because to actually act on what you hear takes courage. And there's a lot of things we can get into that gets in the way of that. Why don't people do what they know is right? So there's a lot of things that blocks us from the heart, because the heart is always there. The intelligence is always available to us. So anyway, that's a little tidbit.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What would you say is the biggest reason that we block ourselves from listening to our heart?
I mean, I'll probably chop it up to three things. Number one is just an overactive mind. When you're high beta activity or like emotional triggers, it's impossible. You cannot enter the heart. You cannot think your way. Number two, it's a distrust. We're conditioned, think about it, like unless we're living in some other planet, we're actually conditioned to not trust our heart. There's some weird thing like, don't trust your heart. It's not safe. And you better listen to the experts out there because they know the best thing for you. So it's like I'm giving somebody the keys to my life and saying, you drive because you know better than me. It's like, why don't I just give them the keys to my house, my furniture? It's like, but it happens like that. It took me so long to actually learn to trust my heart, because we're going against not just this lifetime, but our family lineage of patterning. So that's number two. And the other one, there's a few, but if I were to choose the other one, it's some people don't want to be honest. It's hard. It's hard to hear the honest truth because some people don't trust that they can handle the truth. Sometimes the truth is going to be like, oh, really? Oh, wait, all this time I thought it was actually all in me, or, oh, this relationship is not for me, or like, it's going to tell you things that this job that I thought I was in, it's not for me. It's going to tell us some things that we may feel we're not ready for. And so we may want to block and distract away from. The whole message behind that is just the mind, the ego, all these patterns and stuff from the mind is always auto suppressing. So that's, of course, it's not true. But these are the main, if I were to say the main top three things, these are the top three things that block us from accessing what is already there.
Yeah. I think of, well, like flow state, right? Which I guess my question with that is, do you think people can kind of like live from that state constantly?
No.
Okay.
And that's such a beautiful, Rochelle. Thank you for bringing that. I like, even for me, like we're human beings, we have our heart, we have our, we have all these problems and pains, and we're given our heart as the antidote. The antidote to everything is the love that we are, right? But like, there's a lot of blockage against that. So no, it's like, if we live like that, then we'd be like out there in the universe, one with the oneness of the source, or whatever you want to call it. To me, living a heart-aligned life is not being in that state. And sometimes I went through this, like judging myself. Oh, here I go again. And it's more about, I like to call it coming back to, I love that, because coming back, compassion. We're human beings. It's like, we're humans, and yeah, we're going to mess up. Yeah, we're going to judge. Yeah, we're going to have patterns. We're going to blame. We're going to overreact. And that's perfect. That's part of our human journey, and I feel like it's like we're here to experience our human journey. And in that way, in that journey, come back. Just keep coming back. Not without perfection, like not putting that pressure of like, I have to do it and I cannot mess up, So like, okay, I'm totally, I can't get out of this pattern right now. And I'm just going to sit here with it. And I'm not going to judge myself. And there's this like loving tenderness and compassion that we're being invited to be present with whatever it is that we're experiencing. I love that question. Yeah. I was going to bring that up on my own, because that's a really powerful one, I feel.
Yeah, I'm doing like a psychic development course, and I've always been super tapped into like intuitively in meditation, my heart, right? And as you explain, that love feeling, that light feeling, like I know when I've like tapped into that, right? Because I feel it. And I had a meditation last weekend, and I almost felt high. Like for a second, I was like, whoa, am I going to come out of this? Right. And I have like a regular practice that I usually do in the evening. And I just like sent a voice note to the facilitator of the program I'm in, telling her about this experience. And she's like, oh, I wouldn't try and like get back into that tonight. And I was like, no, 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 I wasn't. Because I know that that specific experience, it's not something that's going to be recreated every single time. Right. I've been meditating for 6 years, and that was the first time I reached that extent of it.
Mhm.
And I don't shame myself. I think like my logical masculine side in the beginning was like, I will meditate and I will get to, and it just never, it's so
Yeah,
fluid, right? You have to flow with it. So yeah, I love that answer, because wouldn't it be wonderful to live like that? But then you wouldn't even be here, right? What was the point of this experience if we're
exactly.
constantly in this higher state?
Yeah, I think it's so great to just be okay with being human, and I think
Hmm.
even the hard ways to embrace that. Okay, like I'm embracing that. And yeah, there's times in life when we get to these states. And by the way, when you're in those states, like that's actually you're like in a really powerful heart state, because the more that you are surrendering to your heart, your electromagnetic field is expanding. So you become this emanation of love. And that is, by the way, when you get to that state again, that's where the manifestation happen. Like now, if you bring in that state, the things you want to manifest, because if the reason we're not even manifesting is because we want it but we don't believe it's possible, so we're actually blocking, we're actually resisting. But in that state, everything is possible. I know what you mean by that, right? So when you're in that state again, that's like an amazing opportunity to plant in some of the seeds of like what you want to manifest, because now you're in that high frequency state, and that's where things are just manifesting, like what you think is becoming and echoing back to you. So that's one thing I wanted to say. But the other thing, that's what's, by the way, when you're having the greatest communications from your highest self, that's when you're getting the greatest clarity. And there's times when we go in those states, and then there's times when we get our anger, we get our grief, when we feel all of that. Then the beauty of it to open up to feeling that, feeling whatever is arising. I think that's kind of the beauty of the heart, is feeling all parts of ourselves, whatever it is. Like there's an embracing attitude and openness to whatever that is arising. There is no that's good and the other one is bad, and
Hmm.
that's kind of like how the mind is. And I think we all have this amazing, powerful heart. It's just that we got conditioned. And so it's just a process of unconditioning and relearning and being. Like the more that we are practicing that muscle with all the things that you're doing, and everybody has different ways to get there. There's no one, I don't believe there's just one way, there's many ways. But whatever way that is, where you're just being and feeling and experiencing the fullness that you are.
Hmm. And when you talk about like this energetic state of like being tapped into your heart in that way, is that something that like can be measured? Like, can you see that like from a scientific perspective?
Yes. So first of all, two things. You can actually tell who's living in their heart, like who's kind of like living on purpose, because they have this lights are on kind of feeling. Like their eyes are sparkling, they're passionate. Like I feel that in you right now. Like you're on, you're activated, the people who are not, and they're living in more of like the mind state, there's like an energy of the cortisol, charged energy, or depletion. Usually it's like, like flat stress. There's a high to that, but it's a stress high, cortisol high, or
Hmm.
depletion, because you're like, oh my god, I'm just so burnt out, I have nothing, I'm like dead. So that's one thing you can sense, and you can tell, like when you're around a person who's like, you're feeling yourself getting activated because you're around them, because it's like there's a presence of so much emanation of their frequency. Now that actually has been measured by heart math. So when you're in that emanation and that oneness and that really powerful coherence of whatever it is, love, compassion, whatever you want to call it, there you can actually measure. There's electromagnetic field that can be measured up to 10 feet apart, which we just have those methods. Probably later on we'll be able to measure way more. And that's why we have this, nonverbal communication and feeling of people. You said that you were like, you have that intuition. That means that you are having that kind of that field that is present, and that's communicating. You're getting information about people and about yourself and about what's happening through that. That's not happening at the mind. It's not like you can say, oh, I understand rationally why. It's not even like that. You're just feeling that.
Hmm.
And when people are in the stress energy, that whole field has been shown that it shrinks, 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 because this is so powerful. When you're in the heart state, the coherent state, and the flow state, and all of that, that actually you're actually creating and emanating energy, which is why people that are in the flow state, for instance, are passionate or like one with. there's a feeling like I have so much energy, right? And you're just like writing or you're talking or you're creating something, right? Whereas in your stress energy, so that one's life-giving. That's the heart chemistry. The other one, stress, is life-taking. So you know you're in the stress energy when you feel depleted, you're reaching out for something. You're reaching out for energy because you're just like depleted inside, and you're that's depleting. So that's actually taking life away. And impatience, I can actually tell how people have been living by just the way that they look. Like they're all the when you're in the stress, it ages people. Like the telomeres, shorten. You can see that. Whereas the people that are like a vitality in them, there's like an aliveness in them, they almost look younger. It's because they're living on purpose. They're living on that passion. They're living in that flow. And that actually lengthens the telomeres. It actually, has been shown to have clearer skin, like just pro health, youthfulness is there, vitality is there. So that's life-giving. The Japanese call it the ikigai.
Mm-hmm.
You live on purpose. You live on meaningfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny. I also bartend, and when one of my coworkers will like see sometimes tips, and she's always just like, "What are you saying to these people?" And I'm like, "I don't say. I'm just me." You know what I mean? And I have like auto suggestions, and I have mantras that I repeat. Like I wake up, and I always put myself like in this state because it's like I have to show up and work with the public, right? And that can be exhausting sometimes. But I'm just like, I don't want it, I feel like I work so much on myself too, and I don't want to be like, because it can be a very dramatic environment, any service industry, any environment really is in general. But I feel like specifically that one, so it's like I'm always trying to put myself in that state where it's like I put up my like thing, and I'm like, your words will just stay there. But I think, like being in that, and I can tell when I go in and I let that seep in, and I kind of like, it sucks down my energy a little bit, and it's reflected, right? And so it's interesting that you said that, because I think that, our energy is so powerful, and people do feel it in just every
Yeah.
way.
That's when that is happening. That's basically, like I call it, you're getting the green light from the universe. So when these things are happening and you're getting like gifts or tips, universe is saying thumbs up, what you're doing is great. When
Mm-hmm.
the opposite is happening, you hit yourself or like whatever, universe is like, nope, you're going the wrong way. It's kind of like the nudges that we're getting. It's so important what you touched on, because I think so often, like people in any service, doesn't matter what that is, right? No matter what, just even in the family, even just in life, when you're waking up and you're not taking that time to like feel yourself and to expand in yourself, whatever that looks like, right? You said mantras,
Mm-hmm.
meditation, nature, whatever, dancing. When that's happening, it's like you're filling up on your tank, and then you're coming to this point of overflow. So that's why when you're around others, it's just overflowing on them. You're not even like trying, you're just being yourself, and they're just receiving like what is overflowing from you. That's how you know that you have a powerful electromagnetic field from your heart. That's
Mm-hmm.
how you know. And why it's so important. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you're at risk for getting easily affected by others. You're at risk for, your energy being hijacked, or getting triggered, or getting easily leaving yourself to patterns, to wounds, and all of that stuff. So the more we do that in the morning before we show up to others, whether it's work, family, friends, I think we would have a much different world, if
Mm-hmm.
all of us would kind of do that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you feel like, I lost my question. Something you talked on. Okay, so it'll come back to me.
Yeah, it's okay. If
But
it's important, it will come back.
yeah, it will. Can you speak to, you did touch on emotions and the heart, and of course, like being in the mastery podcast, I'm always fascinated with that. So can you speak a little bit more to that specific connection?
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is such a great topic. Again, I had lived decades of my life running away from my emotions, because I thought it was bad. I thought unless it's good emotion that makes me happy, then it's bad, And I think that this is something that we don't get taught. We don't get, kids don't get trained this, and they learn all about what knowledge, information, but we're not learning how to interact and deal with we're emotional human beings. We actually make emotional decisions. So for me, the whole point of the way that I experience, how do we use our heart to work with our emotions, to work with our feelings, is the following: that we open and receive whatever emotion and whatever feeling is arising. There is no resistance, and it's a very important little distinction. So you open to feel. So if grief is showing up and we're resisting that, then what's happening is that we're not allowing ourselves to feel what is coming up that needs to be processed so that you can have a healthy body and healthy emotion and healthy mind. And then what happens is all of these emotions that are not allowed, they actually seep into your body and they create blockages, so that when things are showing up and emotions are happening, there's two key things that I distinguish, from the heart perspective. When emotions are intense, or let's say an emotional trigger, it's very important to um, feel the feeling, but without believing the narrative, because there's usually going to be a narrative that comes along that wants to hijack you. It wants to take you back to that emotional wound, stories that are being created. And then what happens is, if you leave the feeling and you go into these stories, then you end up like in this emotional reaction. And you're just like sitting in emotional reaction rather than just feeling the feeling. And you think you're actually dealing with it, but you're actually analyzing it and thinking it to death and just reacting to all the thoughts and all the patterns and all the beliefs that are not true because people are going there. So I think that's a really important distinction. I know I used to do that all the time. And that, by the way, makes the whole thing worse. You know what happens when that happens? It overtakes people, it hijacks people. And now the emotion is taking you over. And now you're just like totally, that's what happens. People get hijacked. And that's why like emotions get a bad connotation, but that's different. And the other thing is that you really stay away from blaming. Like, I'm feeling this because of that guy. I'm feeling this because, so you just, no, I'm feeling this. I'm not going to make somebody else responsible for my feelings, because that's not me owning that's not healthy, right? That's like a victim mentality, and that's just disempowering me and blaming someone else and not taking responsibility for me. So that's the idea, is we feel whatever is there with an energy. I like Rumi's poem. I don't know if you heard of Rumi's poem. It's called The Invitation. There something, I forgot how it goes, but it's just like whatever feeling is coming. Sometimes we didn't plan it. It's like, are you serious? Like, I don't really have time for this. But there's, it's coming because we are here to feel it and to invite it in, take a seat, feel it. And then what are you here to tell me? What are you here? What's happening here? So that's the approach from the heart, is you feel it. A lot of times a feeling is energy, it's charge. It's hard to just feel it and be still. So it's so important to, whatever you're feeling naturally, move, go into the nature, dance, extra, whatever that looks like. Everybody has their own way to like feel it and express it in whatever way that feels for you. And if you do that, it actually takes so much less, because it's a resistance that makes it worse, or it's a judgment that makes you linger in it so long. The people that are stuck, it's because they're judging themselves, they're going into patterns, and that's why it takes so long to get over it. But if we just embrace it, open to it, feel it, express it, it actually goes by much more quicker. And now you just let it move through you, you're opening to it. And then after that, after you've had that expression and that feeling, then you can connect to your heart and say, what's going on here? What is this feeling here to teach me? Maybe there's a wound I haven't healed. Maybe there's a trigger that I haven't loved and I haven't seen, and it needs my love and attention. So there is a process of opening and expanding to see what is the bigger picture, what is the message, there's a message, there's a lesson, there's an invitation for growth and expansion and healing. And then the third part is we use our heart, the unconditional love of our heart, to meet whatever's coming up with love. And the greater the wound, the greater the trauma, just means you need that much love to meet it, And a lot of times we may need help, sometimes, we're trying to do it on our own. And that's not the message. The message is you're here with a community. So whether you do it with your, friends that you can trust, or therapist, or some energy healer, or whatever that looks like, a lot of times we do need to be held like that love, because it's really the love that heals. That whatever's coming up just needs to be loved, it needs to be understood, it needs to be listened to. So that's the approach of the heart intelligence way.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful what you said about feeling it without believing the narrative, because that honestly, because that was going to be my question, is like, how do you feel without believing the narrative, because it can be, you can really like get into that loop and let the mind. I know my own practice when I'm feeling something, but it took me a while to get there, right? Like I was always going back and forth, but it's like journaling it out and then coming down to like the self-awareness of like, okay, this is what's triggering me, this is why. And then at the end of it, I always ask myself, do I know for sure that this story I'm telling myself is true? And you never know, right? You don't know what anyone else is thinking. But if you have any like practices that can help people get into their body and feel it without letting the mind overtake it.
Wait, here's what I have learned for myself. It's really funny. I'm laughing because I especially when we're triggered in that time, we can never believe the story. It is pretty much the only time you can believe the story is if you're checking in with your heart. But that means you got to be like in the alpha state. You got to be like slowing down. So in that trigger state, there's a narrative that has a charge energy. That's like the stress. That's the emotional charge. A lot of times it's triggering back to unhealed wound, unhealed trauma, and it's telling you that narrative that is really not pretty. So it is so hard, by the way. I know that feeling. It is so hard because you really want to go. I find myself, man, I just want to go to that story because I know it's true. But then I've learned to introduce doubt. Do I? Do I know it's true? And then I actually have this thing that I say to myself, like, oh, that's right. I'm in my charge energy, intense energy moving through. Okay, intense energy. Nope. No, this is not the time to try to analyze. We never, like my lesson is, I never analyze in the middle of a strong energy, in the middle of a strong emotion. It's not the time. It's not that divine timing for analysis. That's the time to just feel. So then I will say, okay, I'm mad at that person. I'm not fine. Well, what am I feeling? Okay, what is it? Sadness. Okay, I'm feeling sadness. I'm just feeling it. So I just come back to feeling that sadness. And whatever it helps me. So I have songs that actually help me. I have like a playlist for like songs to like help me feel my sadness. I have songs like for anger. Like anger, I may need to like take a bat and just like hit something because I need to express that anger. Otherwise, if you don't express your anger, it's repressed and it's going to show up. Whatever we're not dealing with healthily, it's going to be unconsciously transmitted on others, the people that we love normally, so like in partners and relationships, it's coming out. So if you don't do it consciously, it's coming out unconsciously and
Mhm.
it's not going to be pretty. So to me, that's the lesson. I don't ever focus on the story. But I made, and that's what I do. Another thing that I do, I may go to the woods and I'll say, I feel this and I'm angry, and I'll just share it. I just like, whatever. I just express it. Whatever that looks like. And then once it's out, now I can calm. Now I'm like, okay, it's coming out. Now that whole expression has released that charged energy. I've allowed it to be channeled out. Otherwise, it just channels deeper. So I channel it out. Now I'm making space inside me. Now I'm creating that capacity and availability to connect to the deeper truth. Okay, so now I'm connecting to my heart. Grounding a lot of time helps in nature, journaling, your favorite music, your favorite dance, and then you connect to your truth, your heart, and you say, okay, what is the deeper truth here? And now you're more in the conscious state. Now you're able to see the bigger picture because you're not emotionally charged. Now you can analyze, but you analyze with your heart. You kind of using your heart to say, it's not analysis from mind, it's awareness from the heart. Okay, what was really happening here? Oh, okay, I went into my abandonment pattern, and that's what I did, and I interpreted the whole thing from me. Okay, so what am I invited now to do? So then I bring everything towards me. This is my invitation. What am I here to grow? What am I here to work on? What am I here to learn? And that's how I do it.
Mhm. If you have somebody that comes to you because I know a lot of people really struggle with allowing themselves to feel that, right? And
Yeah.
let's say you're in your cardiologist, perspective. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody, well, so it's like a twofold question. For one, how do you recommend that they fully feel those emotions that they may be afraid to feel? And then the second part of that question is, if you've noticed, does it have any impact on the heart, like feeling such intense and such strong emotions at once and then also afterwards?
Great. I'm going to answer both of them. These are great questions. So the reason that people don't feel is because there's a limiting belief from the mind that it's not safe. So there's this kind of blockage. Nope, don't feel. It's not safe to feel because you can't. There's a belief I cannot handle what I'm going to feel. There's a fear. There's some taboo. There's a distrust. Like I don't believe in myself. So a lot of times I do recommend get help. Get work with someone, because a lot of times you know like Einstein said, we can't sometimes solve the problem with the same consciousness that created it. So if I'm in this mindset that I am this way and it's not safe and I can't get out of that, well, then if I keep trying the same thing over and over, it's just not going to work. So you may need to go out there. There's retreats, there's workshops, there's therapists, there's somatic work, there's dancing, there's so many things out there that I would invite people to expand out of what have you not tried, what can you open to differently. And with patients, what I do with them is I actually feel into like where they're at, and I'll ask questions that are more, what are you feeling, what really is happening for you right now, what when you had that really high blood pressure, what was going on inside you, what were you feeling. And then I look at them, and a lot of times that's when they start to feel, and they will bring tears and they will share. And I'll say, okay, this is it. This is it. I want you to go home and allow yourself to do this. So healthy for you. And this is one of the reasons that, to be honest, a lot of repressed emotions, undealt with emotions, creates disease and problems. Now, what do you do with the heart? So here's what's happening. This actually, science has shown that when people have repressed emotions, anger especially, repressed anger has been shown to increase your risk of heart attack, I think by like 20%. So a lot of times, like men, when they come into the heart attack, I'll take care of them, blah, blah, blah. At the end, later on, when it's all stable, so what's going on with you? What's happening? And a lot of times, men are like, oh, I shouldn't feel, so then there's the repressed feelings of, this, or a lot of times, grief. And so when it's allowed to channel and to be expressed and to be felt within the realms of your heart, then it can flow. And then you're coming to the chambers of your heart to heal it, meet it with love. And that's what allows it to be healed. You remove the walls and the blockages. But when these are repressed and they're not, the thing is, just because you want to deal with them doesn't mean they're not dealing with you. Because constantly it's there, and it's showing up because you're not allowing yourself to feel it, but it's there. You'll interpret everything through those lenses. Everything is grief. Like you'll basically see your relationship as grief because you're not expressing the grief that you have. You'll get angry at your spouse because like they're so angry with them because you're not feeling your own anger. You're using somebody else to express that anger that you're not feeling yourself. And that has shown to increase your risk of heart attacks, increase your risk of hypertension. There is even a condition where whenever there's a stressful event that happens, it can actually directly affect the heart, the muscle of the heart. So the muscle no longer pumps normally, and it affects the heart. You develop what is called a cardiomyopathy. So the muscle of the heart is not working, and it's called stress cardiomyopathy. And so now you develop heart failure from that. There's actually a condition called stress cardiomyopathy that is now people are becoming more and more aware of it. So again, it's in like the heart is a reflection, is a signal of this is too much. This needs to be dealt with. So yeah, the heart is experiencing all of this.
This is fascinating and so amazing. And there's so many places I could go still with the conversation. But I want to leave it with, if there's any specific message that you want to leave the listeners with in closing this conversation, I'll give you the floor and share anything. And then also how they can find you and how they can work with you.
Perfect. No, thank you so much. And what I would say is, if I were to leave like 2 powerful messages for people is, put yourself in the driver's seat of your life. Really, and it takes intentionality, because without doing that, because of the programming that we have received, the default is that the mind doesn't want the heart to be engaged, because it's actually getting in the way of the agenda of the mind and the agenda of the matrix. So what I would say is to have all of the things that you want to have in life, relationships and health and vitality, creativity, place your heart in the driver's seat of your life. And when that happens, now you are in charge. you know. And the second message I would say is that wisdom that you're looking for out there, or that endless seeking for that love outside, can only really be experienced inside. It's inside you. It starts there. So my message is that the way of the heart is the way of feeling and being present, and that can only happen by the willingness to be honest, and the willingness to start trusting that deeper wisdom. Because when you do that, that will create alignment in your life, and that will create purpose. You're going to start living on purpose, and you're going to start creating alignment in your life. And the third message is, I invite people to get help and support out there, because we're not meant to walk this path alone. That's not how it's meant to be. And so check in with, you know, are you surrounded by people that are on the same path, that are inspiring you, that are uplifting you? And if you're not, then question, like, is this for me? You want to be with a network of people that are on the same journey, that want to walk this path, that are also inspiring you. Because otherwise, it's just like you by yourself, you're going to be dragged back by your patterns and by everybody else's limitations of who you are. So that's what I would say if I were to choose, three messages. And you can find me at heartq.com. This is the program that my husband and I co-created. His name is Chris Agafi, and we as partners came together and created this incredible program. And it's really what it means to live the heart conscious way of life. And so everything is there. We have programs, we have coaching, we're meditations. It's all there. Everything you can find is there. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I just want to honor you for what you do, because I think it is so powerful and so impactful, especially just helping patients and people connect with their heart. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course.